Hey everybody! Today we're going to make garlic honey shrimp. This is a recipe that I usually use salmon with, and it's super delicious with salmon, but I don't have any salmon. I do have frozen shrimp though. So I have about a pound of shrimp here that I have peeled, taken all the shells off of. And if you want to learn how to do that, it's in one of my other tutorials. I believe it is a quick lemon garlic shrimp pasta, and I show you how to take the shells off there. What else you're going to need is 4 cloves of garlic, finely chopped, 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. This is about a tablespoon of parsley. You could get away with less. Here I have a mixture of a 1/4 cup of water and a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. And this is roughly 3 tablespoons of honey. Now I've sprayed the inside of this bowl with cooking spray, so when I pour this out, it should come out a lot easier. And just to change it up a little bit, I have some shelled cooked edamame here that I'm going to throw in at the end. So let's get started. I have a cast iron skillet here over medium heat. I've been letting it warm up. And I'm going to add about 2 teaspoons of oil. I'm using a neutral oil. You can use olive oil if you want. I prefer with this recipe, since it's sort of teriyaki-ish, I don't want to impart a whole lot of olive oil flavor, so I prefer to use a neutral oil like canola, vegetable oil. And you can see in the pan that the oil is getting streaky, and that's what we want to look for. So when you're making this with salmon, you're going, at this point, put your salmon in the pan skin side down, and what's going to happen is you're going to get a beautiful crispy layer of salmon skin. And then once it's cooked halfway through, you'll flip it over. So for the shrimp, I'm just going to toss them in. I haven't seasoned them or anything. There's a lot of salt in this recipe already, so I don't really want to add any right now. So I'm just going to add my shrimp in. And if you remember, if you watched my other video, you'll know that these don't take very long to cook at all. Shrimp are actually a really quick cooking protein, which is nice. Convenient for the weekdays. Okay, so we're going to cook them till they're almost cooked through. Remember, shrimp turn pink when they're fully cooked. They go from opaque, sort of like this opaque color, to completely, well actually, they're sort of translucent and then they go opaque. So that's what you're looking for with all of your shrimp. So we're going to let them cook. They're on medium heat right now, and we're going to come back when they're all cooked. I have a bowl here because I'm going to take the shrimp that are cooked and put them in this bowl when I make the sauce. I also have some fried rice on the side over there cooking away for us to serve with this. Alright, so they've been cooking about a minute or so. They really don't take very long, and you can see that most of that translucence, that grayness on these shrimp have disappeared. But we don't want to overcook shrimp. Again, they can get kind of rubbery, and that's not super appealing in this recipe, or any recipe. You don't want shrimp to be rubbery. So what I'm going to do now is transfer them over to a bowl, because we're going to make a sauce in this pan. And you'll see at the bottom of the pan, and if you make this with shrimp, with salmon as well, you'll get this browning on the bottom, and that's called fond. And we want to keep that. That's a lot of flavor, even when it's shrimp, especially when it's salmon. Okay, so any liquid that's in there, we want to drain off. I got one shrimp that got away. And we're going to just set those aside for right now. So we're going to let the pan dry out a little bit because there was some moisture in there. And we're going to add a little bit more oil. And to this, we're going to add our garlic. About 30 seconds. We're going to cook our garlic in there. We just want to get just till it starts to soften. You don't need to get a whole lot of color on the garlic here. We're looking for a fresher garlic flavor, not so much like a browned garlic flavor here. So we're going to simmer, we're just going to sizzle these up a little bit. I'm going to give my fried rice a stir. It's about, I would say about a minute you want to leave these cooking. Alright, so focusing back on here, we can see that some of the garlic is just taking on some color. And so what we're going to do now is add our soy sauce and our water, and it's going to sizzle a little bit, so expect it. And we're going to add our honey I find a rubber spatula works best to get the honey out. Again, it just slides out of there because I coated the whole bowl in cooking spray. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. And I like these kinds of wooden spoons with the flat bottoms because they help scrape things up off the bottom more evenly. And we're just going to bring this up to a simmer. I know we already had it at a boil for a second, but I want the whole thing to just sort of simmer a little bit. I have hot spots on my stove, so sometimes you'll see it bubble up in some other places first. All right, now that our sauce base has started simmering, I've added a little bit of water, maybe a teaspoon of water to my cornstarch. It's 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. And this is called a slurry. This is a wet slurry. You can have a dry slurry, but for this application, we definitely want a wet slurry. And the reason you want to sort of liquefy your cornstarch before you add it into a sauce is because when it hits that liquid, it's going to clump up if it's dry. So if you add a little bit of liquid, you'll avoid getting clumps of cornstarch in your sauce, which you do not want. So cornstarch has to boil to thicken, which shouldn't take too long because we already have our liquid boiling. So I'm just going to pour this in, and you'll see it go from sort of milky, pretty quickly it'll turn translucent again. And this is the point where you want to taste it to see if it needs salt, if it needs any additional ingredients that you might want to add, if you want to maybe put a little acid in there, like a little lemon, a little lime juice, a little rice wine vinegar. You sort of want to keep with the flavor profile. I wouldn't add balsamic to this, just sort of the way I didn't want to add olive oil. So there's our sauce. It's nice and bubbly, and it's still sort of thin, which is good. We don't want it to be super thick and goopy. So I'm get rid of that. And I'm going to add the shrimp back in. And I'm also going to add my edamame in. And we're just going to give this all a stir together. And the shrimp, if they still need to cook a little bit, will cook while this is happening in this cooking process. So really quick and easy recipe. I know I had some of the prep done ahead of time, but really the biggest prep here is chopping up those cloves of garlic. So it's really not too tough. And then the last thing you're going to do, and you could do this with any protein. I think this would be really nice with chicken thighs, boneless, skinless chicken thighs, personally. I think that would be really nice. Nice touch. But remember, if you're cooking with chicken, it's going to take a little longer because chicken takes longer to cook. And you also have to get it to a particular temperature, 165 internally. So cut the chicken pieces up into smaller pieces. It'll take less time. And there you have it, guys. You could, however you want to serve this up in terms of whatever protein you use, is still going to be a pretty quick and easy recipe to make during the week. So this is when you want to taste it as well. Go in there with a spoon. It's got a really nice balance of sweet and salty and savory. You can, if you wanted to tone it down a little bit, you could always add a little bit more water or broth to sort of thin out the flavor, or hit it with a little bit of acid to balance it out. I might add a little lemon myself. And that is the end of it. I'm going to serve this over some fried rice. I'll show you that in a second. So here's the fried rice I made. I let it get nice and crispy on the bottom. You can probably see some of these little crispy areas. I really like that with fried rice when it gets a little crunchy. So this is cooked in, the rice was cooked in vegetable broth to give it a little extra flavor. So there's our fried rice, and then you're just going to serve your shrimp or your salmon, whatever it is you end up with, right on top, and then you can use a bigger spoon to ladle it on more of that sauce on top. And that's it, everybody. That is a quick garlic honey shrimp. Bye.